Hello and welcome back to Radio 2. This is Lecture 10 and Part 5 of Radio Technology. So what we're going to be focusing on today in detail is outside broadcasts. So what do you think an outside broadcast is? When you hear the word outside broadcast, what is the first thing that pops to mind? So probably the fact that it's an outside and it's broadcast. So if you want to follow in Next Level Radio, we'll be looking at page 274 to 280. So before I carry on, what do you think the purpose is of an outside broadcast? Why do we have outside broadcasts? Why not simply, why not simply broadcast from in studio and just tell people about the event? Why actually be at an event? If we start at the beginning, the purpose of an outside broadcast is to put the studio in a different space in order to enhance the content that the show delivers to its audience. While an outside broadcast may carry several risks in terms of the quality of the programming and the basic control of the on-air product, it can also greatly enrich the opportunity that the presenters and the producers have to deliver unique and compelling entertainment and coverage of topics to their listeners. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've been at outside broadcasts where the line dropped or the signal is bad. So there's been so many issues, but we've also had such amazing outside broadcasts just because of the content and about being right there in between the community. An outside broadcast enables radio to go where its people are and to develop radio that is generated from the interests and activities of its people. So you're literally talking to your listener. There's even an argument to be made that including outside broadcasts in regular programming is essential to the station's health and the station's relevance within their community. There are several types of events and experiences that take place outside of a radio studio that are of interest to listeners and that can't be brought into the permanent on-air studio environment. These can range anything from church services to concerts to music festivals to conferences to political rallies and demonstrations. From a technical point of view, there are a number of questions that need to be answered in order to ensure that an outside broadcast can actually take place. How it will work is that when the technical staff do a site visit, most of these questions can be addressed. These site visits normally take place about 2 weeks prior to the outside broadcast, just to make sure that there are no discrepancies or any issues that can pop up in the last minute. So these questions include what types of main electricity supply points are available, what alternative power sources such as generators or batteries are needed, where are the electrical supplies and the IDSN, the ADSL or data lines located, because obviously you need to be close to these, what length of cable is required to connect the power and lines to the OB vantage point if you need to get in some cables, if satellite links are being used, where can the satellite unit be appropriately placed to deliver a clear line of sight to the satellite. What on-site communications are required? Where will the speakers for the event be located and how will that impact the sound of the outside broadcast? So for example, will it be on a stage or will it be spread out? What type of security is available for the outside broadcast? Will more security be required to protect the integrity and the safety of the presenters? The most important point, however, to consider when doing an outside broadcast is how the product created at the OB, so at the outside broadcast source, will be transmitted back to the studio of the radio station. The outside broadcast will in essence become one of the inputs into the radio broadcast studio, or more specifically, it will become an external input into the mixing desk. So here you can see a picture of a basic outside broadcast schematic. As you can see, it starts there's the bottom. There's the mixing desk at the outside broadcast. There's microphones plugged in here. The OB feed then carries up around to the codec at the outside broadcast. Then it moves to the technology used to transfer the data back to the codec at the station, and then into the mixing desk back at the studio. So that's pretty much how it goes around. And then from there, it can go out into your headphones, or it'll go out to monitors, and it'll go out to the processor and transmitter, which will then send the signal to the listener. When it comes to an outside broadcast, the audio data can be transferred through line-of-sight radio signal, through IDSN lines, through ADSL, satellite technology, or a broadband connection. So there are quite a few ways of doing an outside broadcast. The more stable that the link is, the better the chance of the signal reaching the broadcast center without any interruption. This is why IDSN is still considered the most stable option. However, the installation of IDSN lines is usually dependent on third-party service providers, and it may be difficult to secure. Many radio groups are moving over to 3G, 5G, or fiber broadband options, which have both pros and cons. The advantages are that these technologies are usually easily accessible and can be connected via Wi-Fi or fixed line routers, which means no external installations are needed. Reliability on the other side is, however, an issue, as bandwidth is necessary for this service. And bandwidth capacity has no fixed, always-on solution, and capacity can differ at any moment. Reliability is, however, an issue, as bandwidth is necessary for the service, and bandwidth capacity has no fixed, always-on solution, and the capacity can differ at any moment based on the number of users that's on the network, or just the larger availability of the network capacity. What this means is that at any moment the connection could drop in the quality, or it can drop entirely, leaving the outside broadcast without any connection to the studio. Obviously, this is something you never want to happen, but it will be even more troubling if this is talk radio. Once we know what technology we're going to use for our outside broadcast, this needs to then be installed at the outside broadcast point, or the strength of the signal needs to be tested. If, on the other hand, broadband is going to be used, then the strength of the signal needs to be tested at the broadcast point. This is now where the broadcast engineer or the technical producer will get involved and start creating an equipment checklist. If you have a look at Next Level Radio on page 276, there you'll see a whole checklist in the form of a table to see who's responsible for what's needed and the number required. So this specific outside broadcast seems to be quite a big one. So the department responsible at the first section there is the engineering or the technical production department. And what they need to be taking with them is microphones, cables, a sound mixer with CDJs and a PA system. So in essence, someone will be DJing at this event. Headphones, batteries, mat covers, power banks and extension cables, and codecs. And then you'll see in the last column, it just says how many you are required. So here they're taking 4 microphones, meaning 4 different people are going to be speaking. So either it's a case of there will be 3 presenters and 1 interview, or 2 presenters and 2 interviewees, etc. The second department responsible there is the programming department. They need to provide the log sheets and the live reads for the OB. And there you'll see they need 2 copies and 2 copies of each. Then the marketing or the operations team is involved for tables and chairs and things like branding. So there's quite a bit of branding going with. This seems to be quite a setup. They're taking goodie bags, first aid kits, per diem, and vehicles. So in one of the live classes, we had someone ask about per diem. It's important to realize it's not something that always happens. So there's a lot of factors involved with the per diem. And then lastly, there's obviously the vehicles. So an OB van, a minibus vehicle, and one sedan vehicle, because it needs to take everything with them. Something that we also have to keep in mind, at an external event, an outside broadcast can attract significant attention from the public. So there may be a need for additional security at some of these outside broadcasts, especially if the presenters or staff go into the crowd to go and get vox pops. So when it comes to the type of microphones that are used, it's important to realize that microphones are very sensitive pieces of equipment that can pick up literally any noise in the range of direction. Unfortunately, unlike our brains, which have the ability to tune out certain sounds that when we wish to focus on one thing, microphones capture any sound within their surrounds. This is especially important to note in terms of an outside broadcast, because the environment where we're broadcasting from is not a controlled studio environment. To help manage the problem of noise at an outside broadcast, the microphones are designed to pick up sound from specific angles, because microphones can be omnidirectional, bidirectional, or unidirectional. An omnidirectional microphone is equally sensitive to all sound sources, irrespective of which direction they are coming from. This type of microphone is also referred to as a pressure microphone because of how they actually work. The microphone contains a very sensitive diaphragm that responds to variations in the air pressure in its surrounds. These air pressure variations are caused by sound waves, and the microphones convert these variations into electrical signals through a transducer, which then delivers the sound to our ears. I know it sounds very complicated. The microphone has no way of sorting these sounds in terms of the directions from which they are coming, which is what gives this microphone its name. So omnidirectional means it comes from all directions. A bidirectional microphone, on the other hand, is the most sensitive to sounds coming from a source either directly in front or directly behind it, and will be less sensitive to sounds that come from the sides at angles of 90 degrees and 270 degrees. A unidirectional mic, on the other hand, is designed to pick up sound only coming from the source directly in front of it. The purpose of using microphones that are less sensitive to different directions is to eliminate noise coming from those directions and to purify the sound coming from other specific directions. Setting up sound design requires consideration of these different types of microphones that can elevate or reduce the sound from certain spaces. So these are all things that need to be taken into consideration. Each space has to be uniquely considered based on what sound needs to be picked up in that space. A particular type of unidirectional microphone, called a lip microphone, is often used for outside broadcasts. This microphone has profound noise cancelling properties and is utilized by allowing the presenter to press the mouth guard on the microphone against their lip. So it's literally against your lip. Here you can see what a lip microphone looks like. This is one that's being used by Rodney Marsh, who's a footballer and a sports commentator. Overall, the planning that goes into an outside broadcast is critical to its success. Experienced programming, marketing, and technical production teams often put together their own side kits that they take with them whenever they are working at an outside broadcast. These kits will contain things like Wi-Fi routers that can be used, that can be set up close by for in case there are any fallouts or if there's instability with the connection or the connectivity. They'll also take things like sticky tape, pens, markers, phone chargers, power banks, umbrellas, rain sheets, and a number of other useful items for in case any of the conditions at the outside broadcast changes at last minute. Well, these are the guys that are always prepared. The setup of an OB happens in advance of the actual broadcast going live, as we said, because the marketing team has to set up prior to the outside broadcast starting. And obviously lines must be tested again to make sure everything works. And if there's anything else that needs to be done, it will happen in this time. I want you to please turn to page 279 for me and read that example 7b. The heading says Tobelo FM brings the largest Christian gathering in the country to the nation. So I'm just going to read the last paragraph for you. Over the Easter weekend alone, the listening figures for Tobelo FM spike significantly. Furthermore, the most downloaded podcast that the station produces in the year is the Bishop's Address, which the station records and uploads along with presenter commentary and discussion about the message in the address for several episodes after it has gone live to air. The station management of Tobelo FM believes that resourcing the station to cover the event in Moria over this time and to produce content live on the ground from the events is a critical role made possible through the outside broadcast. So while we're talking about outside broadcasts, I'd like to show you what the SABC's outside broadcast, the SABC's radio outside broadcast menu looks like. So you'll see this was their red card from April 2020, and it will still be their red card until the end of this month. So it starts there with what's an outside broadcast. As we know by now, outside broadcasts refer to a radio program on radio, which is broadcast from a location away from the normal settings of a studio. The location doesn't have to be outdoors. Outside simply means out of the studio. The broadcast is carried out by a production unit with equipment and crew, so the presenter, the technical producer, and the content producer, which is able to travel to a location and provide broadcast coverage. A simple OB unit could include any of the following. Okay, so when to use an outside broadcast. Events or activations commonly covered by OB units include sports, concerts, new branch or store openings, brand product launches and demonstrations, ceremonies, etc. So why outside broadcasts? The use of outside broadcasts assists in taking the brand to the consumer. OBs generate excitement and enthusiasm amongst the consumers or the listeners. So your audience gets excited because you're literally in between them. They offer the brand and the client an opportunity to interact, to be experienced, and thus understood by their consumers or the listeners. The results then, it encourages interactivity, connectivity between brand and consumers. When the listeners experience the brand, they are enticed to consume it or even try it. Consumers get a chance to mingle with the station's on-air personalities who are considered icons in the station's area of broadcast. So there is a subtle endorsement that happens. Overall, the use of OBs have a positive PR spin-off and offers exclusivity. There are no competing brands, only the participating clients' brands. During an outside broadcast, the image of the brand resonates with the image of the station or program. The brand's spontaneous description immediately comes to life. The association of the brand with fun, energy, and entertainment becomes almost natural. If it's a business talk or engagements, personalities adopt a broadcast style that resonates well with the brand tone, manner, and identity. The station's DJs are powerful personalities, immensely popular and widely respected. Generally, they are regarded as role models and community icons, and some are influencers. And here you can see what the value is versus the pricing of each of these. So let's take one that you would know here. Well, let's take a local one rather. So for 5FM, it's 285,000 for an OB on 870 Rand. Versus Metro, which is 483,678. Okay, but then on the other side of that, you get Good Hope FM in Cape Town for 75,000. Umhlobo Wenene for 280,000. You can see Ukozi there for 340. So it depends on what you're looking for, and that's what you'll be priced on. So how OBs are often structured is that you get a couple of things included. So it's not just you're going to be there for a specific client. You're actually going to be giving them free advertising or advertising included in the price also. So in this case, they give 20 30-second recorded pre-promo spots, 3 to 5 minute interviews at the station's discretion, exposure on social media valued at 40,000 and 95,000 for Metro, 5 30-second live mentions, and then the 3-hour live broadcast at the client selected venue. There's a lot of different terms and conditions you'll see, but for them, they need to know 3 weeks prior. Again, as we said, OBs take time to organize. It's not a thing that can happen tomorrow if you come to me today, okay? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. They use a telecom line, so they require 7 to 10 working days to install this broadcast line. And then it's just normal other kinds of information. So that is what the SABC's outside broadcast rate card will look like. And then just to give you another example of the different ways of broadcasting, you remember we mentioned quite a few ways that you can do an OB. So this is someone obviously, or this is someone that's advertising that will do your feed for you. So what they say is that if you're a radio station, Clean Feed is an excellent way to send live audio back to your studio from an outside broadcast at a remote location. So instead of using an ISDN line or other specialist radio equipment, they say all you need is a normal internet connection. So as you can see, there's a lot of different types there's a lot of new technology that's coming out that you can utilize if you want. Here, if you scroll down, you can see kind of just what they look like. I'm not going to go into this in detail, as there's a couple of these out there. So here's just another example that I'm going to show you now of an outside broadcast. So this one is on radio.co. So here you can see the first picture. So there's a legit DJ there with his vinyl. Here's their mixer. So you can see he's actually playing live at the event. Lots of pictures of him doing that. Allen and Heath mixer. I showed you my Allen and Heath mixer in the live class. And here you can see what they do is they send the mixer's output into an audio interface. So that's this little box. Condenser microphones need devices like this to get what's called phantom power. Don't worry about that too much. It's just one of these boxes that's needed sometimes. So in this instance, the DJ takeover used it as a way to take in 2 main input devices and to control the master volume. The audio was monitored though before it went live. They're just showing what they're using there, Mac. Okay, don't worry about this. This is just basically what they did here is just to show you how the DJ's set has been played out on air. So they just use a different type of software. So here you can see what they're showing. So it's the DJ setup that goes into the audio interface, into the laptop, and then it goes out. Okay, so you can see there's different ways of doing these outside broadcasts. Okay, then just to show you another outside broadcast, this is one of 947's ones. This was in 2019, their Discovery 947 Ride Joburg outside broadcast. And it was sponsored by Discovery. You see, so here they're sitting, Anele and the team doing the breakfast outside broadcast here. Let's see, so this is a little bit of a different setup for them with this long table, obviously some branding, the computers. There you can see some banners. So here's their big system that they use.
Thanks to Nairobian.
Okay, so they're just prepping and getting everything ready before they go back on air. So he's going to count them down and let them know when they're going back onto air as well. So and there's their scripts. Okay, so the DJ in the background, you can hear playing live music.
6:22 with the 947 Breakfast Club, coming to you live from the corner of Saxon Drive and William Nicol. That was a feature with Liam.
The 947 Breakfast Club.
Streaming live from William Nicol and Santon Drive.
Okay, so this gives you a great idea of what it's actually
like.
like.
As the 947 Breakfast Club, we are going to do the Discovery 947 right over this
Yes,
year.
we are.
What now?
Yes.
All 94Ks.
No.
No.
No, we're doing the Vitality short ride.
Yeah.
It's around 40 Ks.
Yes.
Oh, that
Can
is.
you please just calm down?
Even Alex.
Yeah, I know, because I know you guys need moral support in the shorter rides. So.
Yeah.
Done the right job of the.
Like I said, you guys need moral support, so I'm going to come and join you. And
So can you see what they're doing is they're talking about
Yes, with training
them, but
started
they're
that
giving
guy.
content to both the listener at home
Wow.
and also the
Cycling on
people
an
who are
empty
there.
stomach.
Okay, so they're bringing in both
He's got
sides.
chips in there. Can you cobble up the chips?
Yo, it's carbs.
Yes.
flavor muffins are
I think these are healthy chips, though.
He's got. He can.
And if I fast forward a little bit. So here you can see he's literally cycling. So they're literally cycling. They're doing the 45 Ks as they're sitting here on their bikes. And he's got his microphone and his headphones on, so he can literally broadcast while cycling. Okay, so they've done this. They've put this whole setup together. So you see, it's like you get a lot of different types of broadcasts, very fun types of broadcasts. So there he's talking now with them. He's going to be live, chatting with them. So they're trying to make this as fun as possible. Okay, so that's just to give you another example of it. The nice thing is that with today's technology, an outside broadcast can be done pretty much anywhere in the world. Relatively easy and at very little cost. Just something quite interesting. The legendary American broadcaster and actor Bob Hope hosted 144 top-rated shows, and only 9 of them were done in a studio. The rest were done around the world for troops during World War II. Bob succeeded in the ratings by making certain that every moment on stage played for a huge radio audience back home and not just for the small group of soldiers in front of him. So this is a very important point for presenters and for producers to remember. The outside broadcast is for the listeners and audience members that are at the outside broadcast, yes, as well as for the audience that are not, as well as for the audience members who are not at the outside broadcast. So you need to be able to cater for both of these audiences. If you execute for only the one and not for the other, you run the risk of alienating or isolating your audience, causing them to might want to tune out. Just to show you what it might look like. So here is a tiny setup for an outside broadcast. So it's not a big deal, not a big thing. It literally shows you how easy it can be to do a setup like this. So here's the 5 Drive team on location. They were traveling throughout South Africa, broadcasting every single day like this. And just an FYI, currently with COVID, what's happening is most people are broadcasting from home. So most of them are doing shows like this with minimal setup. So you see, you don't need a lot to make this happen. So they use something called a Rodecaster Pro. It has the ability to work off a power bank, so they can literally be anywhere with a good 4G signal, which is great. So here you'll see they just have their headphones on. There's a microphone. He's got his mic there with his headphones. And here, once again, the whole setup, literally just there, okay, with a Rodecaster Pro, computer, microphone, headphones done. Here's just a small video so you can have an idea of, just so you can see what it actually looks like. Here's that video.
From the past. What is it that we get from looking back to old toys, old memories, and old things? There's some amazing insights that some people who've been there for a very long time share with us on the show today. Right now, though, we're going to throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. Yesterday's having a good time. Reasons your fellow South Africans are doing good today.
How's that, eh? That's not a bad way to do an outside broadcast. I don't think so. I think it's quite a cool way of doing it. Out in the bush, you just need a couple of things. You're Roadcaster Pro and you're good to go. So that brings us to the end of this radio technology lesson. The next one will be the last one in the series before we move on to content creation. And then we'll also have a brief look at Radio DJ, the piece of equipment, to see how it works. And with that, I say goodbye until next time. Bye.